This is Internet Marketing.
Hello, Kelvin Newman here, and welcome to the Internet Marketing Podcast. We've got a slightly different change of format coming up over the next few weeks. Recently, we had the Brighton SEO event, and one of the popular elements of the program there are panel discussions, where we get groups of people together to have live discussions around interesting topics around search and more broadly digital marketing. So we've decided to take a few of those panels and use them as episodes for the Internet Marketing Podcast, so you can get a bit of a sense of what those panels are like at Brighton SEO. So yeah, we've got one of those coming up. I hope you really enjoy it.
All right, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Tech SEO panel. We're so excited that you're here bright and early. And out of the hundreds of simultaneous sessions, have chosen this one, so we're glad to have you here. So I'm going to introduce the panel of amazing tech SEO experts here for us. So first up, on my far left, I guess your right, would be Paulo Andraus. He's the lead tech SEO at Stylight in Germany. He's from Brazil, and he's been doing SEO for about 15 years and loves to learn and share knowledge. Now, later today at 3:20 p.m. at the Stylight stage, he's going to be talking about big log files using BigQuery and Google Search Console. So that one sounds pretty cool. So definitely put that on your schedule for later today. Next up is Beth Woodcock. She's the senior technical SEO at Anything Is Possible. And she's been doing tech SEO for a couple of years now, but before that, she was on the strategy side of things. And Beth's specialty is making technical SEO easy to understand and building the bridge between technical SEO and the rest of marketing. So I think that's pretty much why she's here today, and I think that's a pretty good mission for anybody to have. So glad to have her here. Now here's the great thing. You can actually catch both Paulo's and Beth's talk in the same session at 3:20 today. She's going to be talking about log files as well. This one aimed at content creators and non-tech SEOs, kind of introducing them into this new world of technical skills that will kind of benefit their SEO processes. So you get 2 for 1 at 3:20 today. Then we have David Gossage. And he has over 10 years experience in technical SEO, working on some of the UK's biggest e-commerce sites, including Tesco and lookfantastic.com. And so if any of you have a special SEO in your life with a birthday or a Christmas coming up and need that special gift for them, he's the owner of SEOgreetings.com, which stocks all kinds of useful gifts for the SEO in your life. So you might want to check that out too.
They're really tasteful as well. Top quality. Yeah.
So David talked about about XPath yesterday. So hopefully you caught it. If not, there's going to be a replay in a bit, but your slides are up. So catch them on socials and you can find that as well. My name is Simon Lesser, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Dragon Metrics, which is an all-in-one SEO software platform. And I guess a bit of my experience with technical SEO is I've been doing SEO since 2007. Starting off on the agency side, always on the tech side of things. And then about 12 in both, I'm from New York City. So both in the US and also in Asia Pacific, in Hong Kong. I was doing agency stuff, and about 12 years ago I founded Dragon Metrics. And so I helped design and build and test our site crawler. And I want to recommend, I don't suggest that you do this, but if anybody's looking to really fine-tune their tech SEO skills, I can't think of anything more challenging than to build your own crawler and test it for the 10,000 edge cases that you're going to find when crawling the chaotic web. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. All right, so we're going to be handling some questions both from us, and we're going to be taking questions from the audience as well. So start coming up with questions yourself. When we take a break for that, you'll just raise your hand. We'll walk around with a mic, and we'll get started with that. So let's get going with our first question. Start out with something a little bit kind of general. So how important is tech SEO for most sites? Is it worth it for like smaller sites, or is this something that only like big sites or enterprises really need to worry about? Paulo, why don't you kick us off there?
Thank you. So it's the first, it depends of the day, I guess. It depends. If your website's really small, you can use one of the ready-to-use platforms like WordPress or Wix, and then you don't have to worry with it as much, and you can focus on your business. But if you have a larger website, then it becomes even more important, because websites with 10,000 pages, 100,000 pages, they have pages that are templates. So you have the product page, you have the product listing pages, and they have things in common. So when you work with the technical SEO part of those things in common, in those pages, you get great advantages. And they are really easy to understand after you implement something. There are tools that you can verify if it worked or not, if they got approved on, let's say, the mobile friendliness of a page, and then you can see results right after. It's not like, let's say, content that you need to first rank, and then get clicks, and then get conversions, and then get revenue. And so I would say that everyone that has a website should be in the lookout for technical SEO, but in different levels for sure.
Anybody else got it?
Yeah, so I think we're all a bit biased, obviously, like we're all tech SEOs. we want to keep a job. But I think if you have a small site that has technical issues, it can't have the potential to be a big site if it has severe technical issues, especially if you have something really disallow the whole site in the robots text, for example. Like, you can't make that into a big site. So in my company, we have like a content team that writes content, but it's really important to have a tech audit first, because that content can't rank if there's some serious issues on the site. So I think definitely tech SEO is the foundation, and I think there should be regular tech checks on a website, even if you have a really small site as well. I see a lot of people kind of be like, oh, we need to do the social media, we need to do the content, but definitely like the tech is, I feel, is absolutely, what we should be doing, yeah.
Sure. I kind of feel like, especially for smaller sites, and I'm not sure what you guys' thoughts are on this, but I see a lot of overemphasis sometimes on tech SEO. Meaning that, like, especially, this is a problem with SEO tools. They see, oh, the site auditor is still telling me I have things to do, all these low priority issues that I still need to do. And I think it's a good reminder for people that, like, what you're trying to do is to stop yourself from shooting yourself in the foot, so that Google needs to be able to crawl and understand your site, and it needs to be usable. But outside of that, it really is, I think, a focus on, content and backlinks and things like that. So in terms of, like, it's a baseline, like slightly different word than foundation, but it's kind of the same meaning that, like, it's necessary but not sufficient. Meaning that once you do that, once you get rid of your high priority issues, then it's all about the rest of things, and that don't worry about anything that's flagged as a medium or low priority issue is rarely, unless you have a specific problem that you're like, well, this is the root cause of it, then you can usually safely ignore those kind of things and optimize for other things before you head that up.
Definitely. And I think you cannot put sugar on dog poo and call it a dessert. You need to have good quality, good content, a good product, a good service. So, of course, technical SEO is the basis of Google-related stuff, but if your product's not good enough, then there's nothing we can do.
I think one frustrating thing is if you've got a relatively small site, and you do your technical audits and checks and that, and you go, well, actually, this site's all right. And it happens quite a lot. So sometimes you might inherit a site, and there isn't a huge amount to do from a technical point of view. And it can seem frustrating, because it might seem like there's time wasted, there's no insights from it, but the fact is, until you do those checks, until you actually dig into the site, you don't know. You could call it Schrodinger's SEO if you like, or whatever. But so there are critical technical issues that will affect every site, no matter how big or small. Until you actually know what they are, you can't know if the site can progress to be a bigger site.
Okay, so since we've got two people on the panel talking about log files later today, I figure that's a fair game for topics today. So I would say, when should I have, or when should one have a log file audit? Beth?
Yeah, I feel like looking at the log files should be part of the SEO process just in general, like the audit process. I feel like making it kind of like trying to do like a log file audit and then like a technical audit separately, like you need them to link together because you'll be looking for things in the log files that will be part of the technical audit. So say if you've just published some content, or like you think some JavaScript's gone wild or something, that's what you need to be looking for in the log files. Like you should definitely be incorporating it into your actual technical audit process, like when you do audits. And then when you are with the client and you're kind of checking up on them and seeing if they've done like the audits, if they've done if they've basically implemented what you've asked them to do, then you should be doing like regular log file checks. So say if they've just implemented a change, it's really great to do a log file check after that. Yeah.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I would like to ask a question to the audience. Who in here has access to log file analysis? Okay.
It's actually higher than I expected.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it's, what, 30% around that? So it's very interesting then to answer the question when you have to do it. Every change of the website, especially in big sections. So if you changed something in your blog, or if you changed something in your product page, that's the moment to check your log file analysis.
And what are we looking for in the log files, by the way?
Is Google still crawling that page or crawling it more? Is it crawling more frequently? Does the page weight increased or decreased? And what do you expect from that? Because every time that you have a change, you expect something from it. So heavier pages are usually loading slower, and what can be affected after that, right?
I've got a real-world example. So has an e-commerce site, and each of the category pages either contained links to subcategories or products, not both. Now, some of these subcategories were buried as far as 7 levels deep. So you had to click 7 times to actually get to the products at the lowest level category, which I'm sure you can all agree is a terrible way to do it. But we didn't have anything solid to go back to the client and say, right, this is actually how you should be doing it. So when I looked into log files, I got the crawl events for every category page, and then put the crawl depth in a column, and created a simple pivot table. And what it showed was when it got to level 4, the crawl events just dropped off a cliff. They went to like nearly 0. So then I was able to go back to clients and say, right, all of these pages, Google's ignoring this because they're buried too deep, and it's only then that they started paying attention.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great visualization. Kind of on one axis would be crawl depth, the other axis would be number of crawl events, and to see that's probably a very linear relationship there, I would guess.
And like, that's a really good example, because like the URLs themselves might be indexed, and you might be like, oh, they're indexed, they're fine, it's great, but Google's not looking at them regularly, so it's not, serving them in search results. Yeah.
Yeah, or removing them, or just finding out that
exactly.
it's gone. Now, with so few hands being raised, more than we expected, but for those of us who have tried to obtain log files, we know how challenging it can be. Now, especially on the agency side, but in-house is not super easy either. So, is there any point, or what is the point of learning about log files if we can't even get access to them?
That's a good question.
Me or you? Which one? You go first, go on.
I'll let you guys fight over this one.
I think understanding the concepts behind it helps to shape your understanding of the website as a whole as well. So if you understand how Google crawls websites through through practicing log files, whether it's on a personal site or a previous client or whatever, having that experience of seeing their log files and seeing how Googlebot interacts with the website, just kind of shapes your understanding of technical SEO as a whole. So then you can take that knowledge, and even if you don't have access to log files, you kind of know, well, actually, this part of the site isn't set up right, and I know it's going to have an impact on X, Y, Z.
Does anyone use Google Search Console? Put your hands up. Yeah. Does anyone believe that what the information that Google Search Console gives you is 100% accurate? Yeah. Okay. So log files come directly from your server. So Google can't lie or manipulate the information about, what's being looked at and what's being served. So that's why you should learn about log files, because you have control of that data.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think it's the same argument of learning pricing strategies. What's the point of learning pricing strategies if we're working with tech SEO? We know it affects ranking, we know it affects how Google sees our page, how it ranks our page, but we're not defining the price of our product or the product that we work for. But it's still important for us to know that some different pricing strategies, discounts, Black Friday, will affect the performance of our websites. So if you don't have access to log files, you still need to learn how they work, because you can understand that in the future Google might not be crawling your website as frequently, because you have blocked a section on your website, a section of your website that maybe you shouldn't. So
now, is there, yeah, so I agree, like just learning how Google crawls is, such an important technical SEO skill to learn. I'm not sure I have an answer for this, but I'm going to throw it to the panel. So if you can't get access to log files, you can learn about it in general, how they work. But there's nothing better than to dig into some actual log files. And if you can't get them yourself, is there any way that you can get practical hands-on experience without access to your own site's log files?
You could build a site.
Okay.
So that's one thing I've done before. You're a little bit limited, because you're not going to get a site that has as much traffic as like some of the big clients or the big sites that you might be working on. But it's a good place to start. I'd be interested to get the other guy's opinion on the crawl stats report in the Search Console. Because that, if I don't have log file access, that's usually the first place I go to, because although the data is a lot more limited, it can give you some insights. So like, as a site where I've found that only 3% of the pages that were actually being crawled were actually in the sitemap. And that was from Google Search Console telling me that. So then I was able to go to them and say, well, actually, it's going to take, if all pages are treated equally, which we know they're not, it's going to take 3 months to crawl the entire site, which is absolutely not what we want to do.
Yeah, I can touch on the crawl stats report a little bit. So the crawl stats report, if you go into the settings tab on Google Search Console, and in the settings there's a little like crawl tab, and if you click into that, you can actually see like when and where Google has crawled to your site, which kind of, it gives you like URLs and stuff, but obviously it's limited to the first 1,000 URLs, and you can only see Google's bots. You can't see Bing bots, you can't see any other bots, you can't see illegitimate bots. So I think that that's a really good place to start if you want to understand where Google is crawling your site. But I think it's also worth, you might think that you can't get access to log files, but you'd be really surprised. Like when I've gone to a client and I've said, oh, can I have access to log files? Totally not expecting to get access to them because they're like a small client or they're not very technical, and they actually do deliver the log files to me. So if you are kind of like, oh no, our company won't do that, or oh, we can't get access to log files, I think maybe if you like push a little bit, maybe push on the clients that you have a better relationship with to try and get those log files, because generally, like if you're doing paid work for a client, they should be helping you getting access to files that are going to help you do your job better and assess their site better. So yeah, I'd really just recommend, I've seen previously that some people are a bit like, oh, log files and we can't really get access to them, but actually, yeah, if you actually have a conversation with your clients, you might be able to get access to them. It's worth having that conversation.
Yeah, so I think let's take a moment to take some questions from the audience. We got one right in back here, so please. So let me repeat the question real quick. What time frame do you recommend looking at for the log files? Is it 6 months, 12 months, 20 years? What do you think?
Yeah, usually, sorry.
No, go on.
Usually for me, it's like every 28 days. I think if you kind of start getting too many log files, they are huge files, and if you're working on like a little MacBook like I do, they can take up space. Yeah, I would just recommend like first 28 days and then like assess it every month. And it kind of depends when the clients make the changes as well. Like say if they're pretty quick to make changes, you could say like, oh, they made a change last week and I'd like the log files for the last week. But I'd say like every 28 days is how I kind of assess log files. But you guys might have
It depends what you're looking for too.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something specific to compare against, then historical data could be useful. But I would say the most recent is going to be way more useful than historic data, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my answer would be however much it gives you the data for the insights. So if you're working on a large site that has millions of crawl events a day, you might only need like 1 or 2 days, because anything more than that is just going to cripple your laptop. And whereas if you are working on a relatively small site like a blog, you might need like a couple of months to get some valuable insight from that.
So of course, always it depends on what you're
Yes,
looking
absolutely.
for. All right, let's take a couple more questions from the audience. We see one in the middle up here is what I saw first. In the black, this gentleman.
So I work agency side. How do you convince hosting partners or web devs to provide you with log files? 'Cause I'm having a lot of trouble with that.
I've been out of the agency world for a while. Anybody?
Yeah, I think what Beth said is a great point, that it helps us do our job better. But at the same time, if it gets too difficult to get, then we can try to go directly to the hosting service. That's what I do most of the cases with smaller websites, because my hosting service, I have access to the log files through the FTP. And that's something that usually you have access to.
Does it help to make a business case for it?
I think it depends on the size of the clients. Like some clients will look at a business case and just go, "What the hell is this?" Some clients absolutely would. I'd probably start with find a problem that you want to solve. So if you've identified something that you think isn't quite right, but you need the evidence to back it up, I'd probably start with that. But I do agree, it is a painful process. I think a lot of the time you might ask for log files and they might not know what you're talking about. So trying to explain it in terms that they can understand as well is definitely helps.
All right. I think we saw another question in kind of the back middle. If you put your hands back up.
Hey, so I was wondering how much maybe weight you put on the warnings in Search Console. So for example, the block through index stuff, where like we started looking at it, but then it kind of goes up and down without any rhyme or reason and stuff like that.
Which warning did you say?
So like the index coverage stuff, right, has some warnings, and it seems like they're just kind of going up and down no matter what we do, and kind of what happens, and that tends to be hard to like tell people internally, hey, you should look at this, but then it goes up or down without any changes.
My personal opinion is whenever you're getting a warning in Google Search Console, it's always at least worth a look. Whether it's worth making sure that warning goes away, I'm not sure. It's going to depend on what it is and what the situation is.
Totally agree. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
Yeah, and also remember that in Google Search Console, that report has a delay. So if you make changes, you don't expect them to have effect right away, or you could hurt yourself and go URL by URL and then do the inspect URL.
You can also get up to 2,000 URLs using the API per day.
Yeah.
But that's a bit more.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I think Screaming Frog has an API for what Simon said.
Yeah. I mean, Dragon Metrics does too. I mean, but yeah, go ahead.
So I'm interested if you ever attempted for larger websites to derive a crawl budget that Google gives to the domain, using the log files. I'm asking this specifically because A lot of SEOs look at the log files and then they see, okay, I have 2 million requests per month, and that's my crawl budget. But of course it's not, because Google doesn't know requests, they only know server time spent. So I can feed Google like 10 million redirects that are crawled super quick, and I will have 10 million requests more. But of course, they're not really relevant. So I would be interested in getting to know from you, how would you derive a crawl budget that Google gives my domain using log files?
In my first instinct here would be to break down your log files by sections of your website, and ideally verify different Google Search Console properties so you can see how it affects the index coverage in each one of these properties.
You can filter as well in the log file analyzer. You can say if there's a specific section of URLs that you're targeting. You can basically just say if you've just written content, or if there's like, oh, I just want to look at how the blog section is being looked at, you can like crawl the blog section and import that into log file analyzer and see that you can like cross-check it as well. So you're not just looking at like millions upon billions of URLs, you can look at a manageable amount of URLs.
These are all great questions. Just so we don't become the log file panel today.
Sorry.
Let's move on to a couple other questions we've got. We'll come back to the audience in just a moment. So let's talk about the kind of the other side of things. If someone wants to get deeper into learning tech SEO, what's the first thing, or maybe the most important thing, that they should study? I'm just gonna open it up to everybody.
Yeah, how to communicate with developers. I think
that's the first thing, or most important thing, or both.
I honestly, like, I think you could be like, you could be like the best tech SEO. You could learn loads of coding. You could, I know Python, and it's great. It's like, well, if you can't get those basic changes implemented by developers, then it's like, well, so what? That you need to be able to communicate to developers and have a good relationship as well with your clients in order to get to persuade them to implement the changes. I think that's the most important thing about being a tech SEO.
I think when it comes to developers, make sure any brief that you give is absolutely watertight, because if anything can be misinterpreted, it will be misinterpreted.
Developers' job is to be pedantic for a living, and that extends past their code.
But yeah, I think as well, knowledge of HTML is probably critical for technical SEO. I know I've heard many people say like you don't need to code. I would argue that HTML is code. It doesn't make you a programmer, but it is code. And understanding how websites are built, how they're structured, what the impact of doing one thing it will have over another thing, all of that is critical. And like you won't be able to give a developer a brief unless you actually understand the HTML itself.
I think I would say the most important and kind of the first place to start is really understanding tech SEO is about understanding the web and understanding how everything works. So, for example, I give a lot of tech interviews a lot for web developers, and one of my favorite questions asked is I say, explain to me in excruciating detail, as detailed as you possibly can get, what happens between when somebody types in a URL into the address bar and when you hit return. What happens between then and when the page is rendered on your browser? Describe that to me, right? And so essentially that's what I think that we should learn, first as technical SEOs. So a big part of that is learning the HTTP protocol. Not just the different status codes, but actually learn what it is and how it works, and how do web browsers work, and how does the request go, how does DNS work, and things like that. Just the basic building blocks of how in the world the internet or the web works is gonna make so much more make sense, even more so than learning Python or something like that. I would say learn Python or learning to code when you have a problem that you need to understand code. But I think understanding how the web works is a prerequisite that gets too often skipped.
Yeah, scared with the number of SEOs that work on the technical area and don't know how the DOM works.
Yeah, learn the DOM. Yeah,
learn the DOM.
So leading off of that, for kind of non-techie SEOs who would love to kind of up their skills, do you have any tips in getting past that kind of imposter syndrome and fear of technical things?
I think.
I'll take that one first.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I would say there's two parts of it. There's one part is things that we, if you identify as somebody who is in tech SEO or just in tech, that we should be doing. And the other thing is what the individual can do. So I think us in the already tech SEO or tech club should do is, we need to reduce gatekeeping and things like that. There's still a huge problem in the tech industry of, gatekeeping and sexism and misogyny and just the, tech bro kind of thing. And I think we, of course, need to continue to do a better job of that and making it more welcome and say, hey, we welcome all skill sets and we welcome learning and we want to bring you along with us. So that's something that is on us to do. On the other side, on how do you get past imposter syndrome? Because I've absolutely struggled with it too. And how did I get past it? Everybody has somebody they look up to. And how I got past my imposter syndrome is the person that I looked up to admitted that they had imposter syndrome. And they said, here's how I got over my imposter syndrome. The person that I looked up to admitted that they had imposter syndrome. So it's imposter syndrome all the way down. And so you just got to be confident and fake it till you make it, and just know that nobody knows what they're doing. And no matter how much, the more you know, if you're a smart person, the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know, and you will never know it all because there's a million lifetimes of information out there, and it's not humanly knowable. So just don't be confident. Don't let anybody hold you back. Don't let anybody gatekeep you. Just learn and find an ally who's willing to mentor you and run with it.
Yeah. I think the person that claims to know it all is the person to heavily avoid or to...
I think I already kind of try and work this into my process anyway, like my audit process. I try and get like the account manager of the site that I'm auditing or SEO strategist to review my work. This helps them with understanding what technical SEO is and gets them involved, but also they have visibility over the accounts, like what PPC are doing, what's happening over there. So I think if you have a particular person in your company that's like technical already or works on tech stuff, maybe ask to like look at their work and what they're producing, review their work, and then yeah, just get kind of see if you can get poured into that process a bit more if you want to learn about technical SEO. Yeah.
Okay. So should we, kind of along the same lines, should we teach tech SEO stuff to content teams? So on the other side, got tech SEO on one side, got content SEO on the other side. Is it worth kind of cross-pollination and spending that time training those teams up?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I'm pretty close with the content team at our company, and if I'm doing like an audit and I see like a content opportunity, I will always just like, give a heads up to the content team that this is a content opportunity that they could possibly upsell. And it would be really nice to have that back. Like we do get that back as well if they notice anything that's like, we're not really seeing like the rankings or something like feels a bit wrong here. I'll look into it. They don't necessarily have to like learn code or learn like something really dramatic. It's literally just about, hey, I think there's a technical issue here, and then we can work through it together. It's like making sure you're working within all of your teams.
Can we dig a little bit deeper? Why is it time worth spending to spend the time training the content team? Somebody who's like, I'm just a content writer, I don't need to know that jargon mess. What benefit does that have?
I have a good example for that. Mm-hmm. We working with the content team, we have seasonality, content that's more important right now that it will be in 6 months, especially in the fashion industry. And then teaching the content team to look at the log files and see if that content is actually getting crawled and getting indexed as soon as possible is very important, because they could be looking at the number of clicks, and that's okay. But if they realize that there is a section of the website or a section of the blog, a section of the magazine that is not getting crawled, they can notify us and we can take an action. Increase internal links, decrease the speed of the page, work with the engineers to do whatever we think it's important. So the content team is the first step in creating the content, and they are the stakeholders of the results of that content. So if they know a little bit of the technical SEO part of crawling and indexing, it's already very valuable for them.
You mentioned internal links there. So I recently worked with a content team who were doing things like 80% right, but their internal linking had no strategy whatsoever, and I would class internal linking as a technical SEO task. So I basically gave them some lessons on what to do. I think what I would also say is some of the best technical SEOs I've ever worked with started in content, and I think having it like a genuine interest in SEO in general. Sorry, general twice there. Will basically help anyone get better at their job. Yeah.
I think it goes back to that point of mentorship too, to help everybody along. Okay.
If I may add something here, for our content team, we created a virtual machine with Screaming Frog on it. Sorry. And
no, I love Screaming Frog.
And they just import a configuration file, put the domain that they're working on, and it already spits out everything they need to know. They make the analysis, and they tell us in the report that I ran here, I realized that this part of the fashion magazine is not really being crawled. What's happening? And then we realized there is a no follow on the navigation, something like that. So they can start the analysis. They don't need to learn how to set it up or how to make everything happen, but it's nice for them to understand that it exists and that they can start the analysis. So
sounds good. All right, let's open up to the audience for some more questions. This gentleman in front was the fastest that I saw. Wait just a moment for the microphone to make its way.
Hello. I am the example of what you said a couple of questions back about a non-technical SEO who needs to know more about this sort of stuff. The first real technical experience I started getting was when I started leading the overall technical or SEO strategy for the company I worked for. And that's a hard time to start making that entire strategy. I am now at a point, done that for a few years, have some SEO experience in the technical side of things, various use cases where things have happened I've had to figure out. And I'm managing people who are like more technical focused. I don't have to worry about it. I don't need to know everything. I wondered kind of how much should I know to be able to manage that person well? Like if you're being managed, if you're kind of managing people, what is the level that you need to be at to be able to be a good manager for someone without needing to know everything they're doing?
Well, that's a good question, and I like it a few different parts of that. I mean, first of all, I would say that I'm not convinced that that is the worst way to learn SEO. I think that trial by fire is always a great way. I mean, it might be the most stressful way, but it is a way to learn your stuff quickly because there's no other choice. And sometimes you're on a small team and like somebody walks up to you, and in 2007 somebody said, you're our SEO guy. I'm like, SEO what? And so that's just what you do. Now in terms of, to clarify your question, how high should your tech SEO level be to be able to manage tech SEOs? And I think that management and practicing are different skills, and obviously you can't know nothing. That creates its own set of problems. But I don't think you need to feel like your tech SEO skills have to be higher than your development. I manage our developers at Dragon Metrics, but thankfully my developers know way more than me. And that's kind of how it should be. So there are different skills and different knowledge sets. You should know kind of more of the higher level things of what's important and why and that kind of thing. And they should know how to do it. And I don't think that I don't know how we can answer the question, this level, 4. that level. It's hard to describe. I think we just have to think in general terms. Anybody else have thoughts?
Was it Steve Jobs who said something along the lines of like he hires people who are smarter than him so he doesn't have to know? It was something like that anyway. But I think there is a responsibility for your team, though, to be able to explain what they're doing to you. So it's on them to tell you what they're doing and why they're doing it and what the benefit it should be. And don't be afraid to ask those questions as to like why they're doing it. And I think an old manager of mine had a classic phrase as like, so what's the next steps as well? So if someone's spending all of their time doing analysis, you go, okay, so what are you going to do with it? How are you going to take this to make a performance better?
Yeah, we're all learning as we go. So I would say use this as an opportunity to learn as much as you can, as fast as you can, but don't let that hold you back or feel insecure.
Thanks.
Next.
Hi, we've got a global site across 20 languages. I'm responsible for EMEA, and we have a global dev team. And as far as they're concerned, Technical SEO starts and ends with a Core Web Vitals report. That's it. What are they missing?
The rest of Tech SEO.
Yeah, I think the first step would be the hreflang setup.
They've been avoiding that for months. It's too much.
That might be the first place to start.
Yeah, because I think when it comes to international SEO, that's like step one, and then everything else follows afterwards. So you need like a single source of a well. It usually works best with a single CMS that branches off into all the different sites, and how that's set up across 28 sites is very complicated. But I say that's the first thing they they need to do. If the sites are quite simple, you might know. Okay. You need to go to them with a rock solid hreflang brief and start from there.
I mean, hreflang has been a point of contention for a long time because they've got so many other priorities and it's so time-consuming to figure out.
So I think what I would do is to go to them with the evidence. So I've worked on sites where the hreflang has been mostly okay, but not okay in one of the countries. So then you have to go to them and say, right, if you know what pages are ranking in what country, you can go to them and go, well, actually, in this country, like in Mexico, the Spanish site is ranking. So going to them with that evidence and showing them we're missing out on all of this traffic here, and if their own country's ranking as well, it's probably going to affect you how well you rank as well. Because if all of your prices are in dollars, you're not going to appear. You're not going to rank very well in UK.
I'd look at your issues first, see because Google doesn't need hreflang. It's a signal. It's supposed to help them, but magically maybe Google has, understood your languages correctly, and maybe it's not your first priority. Some sites it really is. So it's are you having troubles with indexation? Are you having trouble with the cannibalization? Are you having trouble with internal linkings? Are you having trouble with, whatever? I would say look at that, and that's how you prioritize things. But I think Core Web Vitals that was actually one of my next questions. It's good, especially for users, but for SEO, it's kind of a
You can also tell them to play with schema markup if hreflang is so impossible to touch.
I mean, schema sounds almost more complicated than hreflang in some ways.
At least you don't have to link all the pages.
Internal linking, good topic.
Yeah, I mean through the hreflang, like the way that all the pages are connected that way, it can get very complicated. Whereas with schema, you only have to worry about the individual page.
Any other questions? This gentleman was extremely fast.
Hi, Simon.
Hey.
I promised you I was going to be in the second row, but my trainer had another plans. I had a bit of a technical question, if I may. So when we look into GSC and crawl stats, we see three matrices. It's total download byte and a response time and crawl requests. Is there any insights or data we can get from it?
Can you repeat that one more time?
So when we go to GSC, we go to crawl stats, and then we have a time series that goes crawl stat requests byte, and then we have response time, and then we have number of requests sent to the server. Is there any insights we can drive from it? Like, oh, like suddenly, like we have a massive spike in there, like what it could be like?
I've had some insights from the crawl stats report in the past. So I mentioned before about how we measured how many pages were being crawled. There's other things like the impact on page speed. So if you're dealing with a massive site, page speed can have a big impact on crawling. And you can see in the crawl stats report, if you make a change to how fast the page loads, it directly impacts how many pages get crawled a day. So that's a really easy example, and just simple things like you can see which user agent is being used more. So if your website is still getting crawled more via desktop, there's a good chance there might be like some mobile issues there. Had a client recently where the most common type of page being crawled was JavaScript. When it should be HTML, so we knew that there was an issue with versioning there, so that needed to be resolved. So there are quite a few insights. It's obviously not as good as digging into the log files, but there's insights there to be had.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And like second question, can I just? So can we correlate that server response time with total time for first byte? Just to see if there's a correlation between, or it could be an indicative of how we are performing on time to first byte, in addition to the normal core web vitals report we get.
I assume that those were the same thing. Time to first byte and server response time?
Yeah, I think they are.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, that was my doubt. I was like, yeah, better have the expert's opinion as well.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you, guys.
But I would say just use that as a jumping off point to do a PageSpeed Insights or a Google Lighthouse, examination of that, and that'll tell you way more details than what Google Search Console is going to show.
Especially when you change servers, that old case of websites that are getting bigger and they go to the next fancy server. That's the report you want to look at.
Let's do one more audience question, and then we'll go back to our.
Just following on from that question, what steps could you make to improve that time, apart from things like, say for a WordPress site, you've got Rocket and things like that to improve speed. It's like, how much more benefit would you get from moving to hosting, and what kind of hosting would that be? For time to first byte? For the time in the Google Search Console for that crawling report, because I've read a lot of SEOs saying that to aim for 100 milliseconds in that specific report, and we're sort of at 500 milliseconds and not getting anywhere close to that crawl speed. So we're kind of missing out on crawl because a lot of the time spent downloading each individual page. And it's that specific report in Google Search Console in the settings where it's got a time metric for the time it's taking to look at those individual pages.
Yeah, I think decreasing your time to first byte is always a worthwhile endeavor. How to do it? Anybody want to handle that?
You can try to break down your files that load on that page to be only loading the things that you have on that page. I saw multiple times that the home page JavaScript was loading the products that only appear on the product detail page, or especially on e-commerces, you have like the vendor JavaScript that loads everything that needs to be counted so the conversion is tracked. And sometimes you can just break it down. Google Chrome has a report that shows how much or what's the percentage of your files that are being used on that page. And it shows you the section that's not being used. And then you can ask your developers to remove those sections, especially on very larger websites or JavaScript file. You can remove like 80% of that file. It looks tiny because it's, I don't know, less than 1 megabyte file, but still it makes a difference on the time to first byte and everything that needs to be loaded on the first visit from Google from a first time user.
I think time to first byte is often reliant on the server speed and resources, as well as the network and network location as well.
You mentioned WP Rocket. Would you say that your site is, I'm assuming it's a WordPress site, would you say that you've got a fair amount of plugins on there?
I would say it's a constant battle with my boss to remove, plugins that I see as offering no benefit, but they're like I'll give you the worst example would be Jetpack, just for him to see how many people are visiting the site a day when we've got Search Console, Analytics, Routy tracking affiliate links already. So it's a battle on that front. But if I can go back and say these are having an impact, can we test the site without them? If that would lead to more crawling, then that would be great.
Yeah, so what I would do is create a staging site, so like an exact replica, and just disable all of your plugins. And if you do that and the time to first byte is still bad, then it's server related, and then you can enable your plugins one at a time, and then keep testing it. And when you enable one and you see there's a big jump, then you go, well, actually, I think this is the culprit.
A to B test. That sounds like a great idea. Fully support that. Okay. So.
There's one more there.
We can do one more. Who are you pointing? Okay, right here.
Is there a course or any other source of knowledge you would recommend for someone who wants to learn JavaScript SEO? Yeah, I mean, I've been having trouble finding anything.
Back in the day when I learned JavaScript, I knew which resources were available. I no longer know what's good these days. Anybody?
I personally hate JavaScript with a violent passion, so I'm probably the
necessary evil though.
I'm probably not the person to be asking, because my answer would be to burn it to the ground personally.
Are you learning about JavaScript or JavaScript SEO?
JavaScript SEO.
SEO, yeah. Have you heard about learningseo.io? So that's like a really great resource. Aleda, yeah, Aleda. That has basically for anyone really, if you want to learn anything about SEO, it's always being updated. That's basically how I started learning SEO, and I've kind of I go back to it regularly to be like, oh, what's changed, and sometimes you kind of come across an issue and you're like, oh, I can't quite remember how to solve that, and then it has really great list of SEO, everything.
It's links to many resources, right?
Yeah, absolutely, really good. It's a resource of resources. I'd definitely recommend that to anyone who wants to learn anything about SEO.
And there's a YouTube series from Martin Splitt from Google, where he also highlights some of the important things you need to know. It doesn't go into detail, but especially in his case over here, that you need to be a manager, but you don't know how to do the step-by-step stuff. It's perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
So, question for the panel. Not necessarily which tool, but just kind of with so many SEO, tech SEO tools out there, how do you choose a good one? Or how do you make sure that you don't choose a bad one?
What's my budget?
What's that? What's your budget? Well, I mean, if that's part of your decision-making process, then that's part of the answer then.
Yeah, definitely depends on the size of the company and the evolution on the SEO aspect that they already have. If they are already covering everything else and then it's time to focus on tech SEO to get the extra gain, I would go for a more expensive tool that gives me everything that I need to know. If I'm just in the discovering phase, then I would go for a tool that I need to do a little bit more of the work, and then I would make a business case of, now it's time to upgrade to X to Y. That would be my process.
Yeah. I think the fact is a lot of SEO work isn't very glamorous. There's a lot of time spent doing quite boring work with spreadsheets, and chances are if you're doing quite a laborious task, there's probably a tool out there that will do what you want to do. As Paulo mentioned, it comes down to budget. So you might find that the tool that you want just isn't feasible, and you have to carry on doing it by hand. But if you do identify that one thing that you think, right, we need a solution for this. This solution exists in Dragon Metrics, or probably more likely Screaming Frog. And then we can go down that route and make a business case for it.
Yeah, I would say one thing I would avoid when you're evaluating SEO tools, I would say avoid anything overly prescriptive. There's a lot of SEO tools that say do this, or do this specific thing, because it sells SEO tools because they say, I don't want to learn tech SEO. I just want software to tell me exactly what to do, and I'm here to say that that's not how it works, and that is a recipe for disaster. So you're gonna have to learn some tech SEO, and then get a tool that is descriptive rather than prescriptive, or at least, one that makes a balance between the two.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of demos, there's a lot of free tools as well. And there's also a lot of people like here today, like showing off their tools. So if it's something that will ultimately save you time, save you energy, so you can delve deeper into a technical SEO topic, then yeah, I'd recommend that sort of tool. But don't just be like, oh, well, everyone has this tool, so I'm going to use it too. It's got to suit you and your use case scenario.
You have to remember that your time costs money.
Yeah.
So if you can say, right, I'm spending this much time doing this task, that's costing you this much, then you can say, well, actually, this tool costs that much, it's less than what I'm spending on this.
I say this not just as the owner of an SEO tool, but I do think it's ludicrous how people make decisions about their software. That they're, a good SEO tool will save you dozens of hours or even multiple humans each month. And they're comparing like, well, this tool is, $79 and this tool is $99. Let's save $20 here. When you're comparing, how much does it cost to hire a tech SEO, a month, or an extra person? How much is that person's time worth? And when you make a comparison that way, it's like absolutely no comparison at all. And now I'm not saying that you have to buy an expensive SEO tool, but the decision to make when it comes to pricing is how much time is it going to save me, or what's the cost of making a mistake of this stupid SEO tool telling me to do this thing that wastes our time or harms my site. That's way more important than the sticker price on the SEO on the tool. All right, we're running out of time. Let's end with one final question, which is always one of my favorites, is what is one of the biggest misconceptions or myths you think that people have about technical SEO? I'll open it up to the panel.
It's only meta title and meta description. And then if the Yoast is green, you're good to go.
I feel like I have a lot of people on LinkedIn. I follow some amazing people. I get quite intimidated by a lot of the people what people are achieving. So making software and things like that. But tech SEO isn't about that. A lot of it is about the basics, the foundation. And I think if you can get the foundation done really, really well, then I think that makes a good tech SEO.
Yeah. It's not really a myth, but I've come across many people who like to use long words and complicated language when they're making their case, and I've helped big companies recruit SEOs, and I've seen some CVs and some of the money that some of these people are asking for, and go, Jesus Christ, these are terrible. Just because someone a good technical SEO should be able to explain what they're doing. They should be able to explain why they're doing it. They should be able to communicate with someone who isn't technical. And I feel like sometimes people deliberately try and make things sound more complicated than it is, just to make themselves look more intelligent, and maybe pull the wool over someone's eyes to mask what they're actually doing. Maybe I don't know. So.
Very good. I think let's end with one audience question. Who's going to be the lucky person with their hand up?
So to be able to migrate a website more effectively, to speed up the migrations, in terms of technical SEO, what would you do with language models to speed it up? So let's say you have a website migration needs to be redirected into different languages as well. How would you run the script on a particular, if it's a Python script, to be able to make it more efficient, to speed up the process of redirect mapping, for instance?
So a nice simple question to you missed my talk yesterday on custom extractions, actually. So I actually had a solution for this. One thing you can do is you can pick, so for an e-commerce site, for example, every product has a SKU. If you can extract that SKU for every product, you can find the URL for that SKU on the old site and the new site, and suddenly do a VLOOKUP, and then you got all of your redirects for every single SKU done in one go. So that's one easy thing to do. There was a script published on Search Engine Land or Journal, one of them, that uses LLMs to map redirects. I've not used it personally, but I've been told that it's very good. So
I would say double check with a human after.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's based on like the similarity scores. So let's say you use that script, you use that tool. How would you say, based on the similarity scores, if of course you haven't used it, but for someone who used it, let's say you have a very large site, and then that site needs to be, well, redirected based on the similarity scores. Where would you start? So of course you would start on the bottom, the pages that are less similar, but where would you go from like the bottom to middle, or would you start higher up?
So I would first of all identify your critically important pages, and those critically important pages, they need to be a human reviewed. So you can automate it to an extent, but unless you've got like human pair of eyes cast over it, you are risking losing huge traffic. So the automation side of it, if you're not going to review it, I would reserve it for those pages that get a little bit of traffic or no traffic, and then you're not losing anything, but you are maintaining those pages and like any authority that those pages might have.
Completely agree. I would say let a human do as much as possible before letting a machine decide for you, if at all possible. So I think we're gonna have to leave it for there. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your amazing questions and hanging out with us.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of the Internet Marketing Podcast, produced by the team behind Brighton SEO, the world's largest specialist digital marketing conference covering SEO, PPC, paid social, web analytics and content marketing. If you want to find out more about us and the show, you can check out the website, internetmarketingpodcast.org. And if you've not already subscribed to the show, you should hit that subscribe button. And can I ask a favour, if you are subscribed and you're enjoying the show, can you leave us a review wherever you're watching or listening to the show? And if you want to get in touch, become a guest on the show, or just generally feedback about what we're doing, you can always email me. That's kelvin@brightonSEO.com. So KELVIN@brightonSEO.com. Or of course, you can contact me on social media. So at LinkedIn or Twitter, my usernames are Kelvin Newman. See you soon.